Shakti. See my new. I finally got my Volkswagen van again. Took me 30 years to get it again. Alrighty. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devyam Atriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindebhyo Sarva Lokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadarmasya Sarva Dharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna Yate Namaha Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ashmaracharya Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Deva Param Brahman Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Om Bhadra Kālī Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Veda Veranga Veranta Vijjastanebhya Evacha Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om Dvaima. So last week I think was Kali Puja. So we didn't have class, I think. Yeah, was that Saturday? Last Saturday. Shama Kali Puja. A lot has happened since last Saturday. And tonight, or today, is Skanda Shasti. That's why on the shrine today we have a beautiful murti of Muruga, Skanda, Kartikeya. And so since last night and today, so many extra mantras and prayers have been chanted. I think tomorrow is his wedding. He gets married tomorrow. Devasena, I think. Right? To both of them? Did they get both married to both of them? Same. To Vali and Devasena. I think tomorrow his wedding. So very auspicious. And actually even the whole month is named after him. It's Kartik. So it's on this day, so many of his holidays. On this month, so many of his holidays are there. So picking up where we left off on the Kālī Sahasranāma. We are on verse 28. That means, name 202 of appropriately named 1,000 Sahasranāma. And so I'll recite the full verse. Aparṇā niścalā lolā sarvavidyā tapasvinī gaṁgā kāśī Śacī Sītā Satī satya-parāyaṇā. So last couple meetings we talked about the Gaṁgā and Kāśī. This is our talk last week on Kāśī. And Kāśī is the name of course, a holy city, but we filled an hour and a half discussion on the glories of Kāśī. And we mentioned at the end of that why is Kāśī listed as a name? Of course, we know the glories of Kāśī and Gaṁgā like that, but why is it a name of Kālī? Right? That there has to be some, and then we brought up some less known lila of how Shiva was kicked. He had to leave Kāśī for a long time, had to renounce Kāśī, but he longed for Kāśī like the same way he'd longed for his spouse. So Kāśī itself is shown in that story to be a manifestation of the Divine Mother herself. So it was a very nice connection. So the next actually 4 names. I think we can probably finish 4 names in this. My idea is these 4 names. It's always my idea. I think I might get one name into it, like Kāśī. Last meeting, I was supposed to do Kāśī and these 4 names, so I only got Kāśī. So I don't know what's going to happen. But the 3, it's very nice because we've mentioned in the Kālī Sahasranāma there's a lot of clusters of names, and I think the clusters have some why the names are clustered together, and sometimes like Gaṁgā, Kāśī, that makes sense that these names are put together, and then a lot of other aparṇā and Parvati and the previous name tapasvinī, niścalā. These are all names of Parvati and her Leela is doing tapasya to get Shiva as her husband. So that made sense. So you have these three names. Let's switch pages here. Śacī, Sita, and Satī. Right, so they have a similar sound, and then the final name in the group is Satya-parāyaṇā, which will hopefully be able to close it up with that name. So Śacī, Sita, and Satī are three distinct goddesses, right? They're the consorts or the spouses of three distinct gods, right? And so, but this is not a list of, this is not the 1,000 names of various gods and goddesses. It's not the name of the hymn. It's the Kālī Sahasranāma, right? These are all names of Kālī. So in the development of this type of literature, you could see that we've mentioned this before, is that what's being developed is this idea of the Mahadevi, where although there's many goddesses, right, there's actually, they're all the goddess, or aspects of the goddess, or qualities of the goddess, or incarnations of the goddess, manifestations of the goddess. And sometimes it's obvious, it's like there's a group of names like she who holds a sword, she who holds a severed head, she who stands on Shiva, she who lives in cremation ground, she who has a long tongue. Those are obviously describing the classical form of Kālī, right? But then you have she who is Sita, and she who is Satī, and she who is Śacī. Those seem almost unrelated. They're not. These are not. They're not the normal form. They're not forms that Kālī in the stories. They're not names of Kālī generally, right? They're names of other goddesses. But in this listing, it's showing that they're seen as all names of the goddess, and more than that, in the Kālī Sahasranāma, Kālī is being associated with the goddess. She is the goddess, the Mahadevi, that manifests all. Not only has her distinct leelas and forms and names and qualities associated with the Kālī, but she's all names, all the different goddesses and their Shaktis and their qualities. Remember, some months back we were talking even seemingly minor, almost forgotten form, like Apsaras and Dakinis and Yoginis and Kinnaras and what were the other ones? We had all kinds of these. I guess in the Western tradition, we have to be careful. It's like fairies and elves and gnomes and leprechauns and all these different categories of kind of divine being. And these are not usually seen as forms of Kālī. These aren't Kālī's rupas, right? But they are. Every in a certain sense, everything is Kālī's form, is a form of the Mahadevi. But specifically going through all these famous, at one time really famous, because at one time Naga worship, Jai Ma, welcome back. Those watching online, you'll have to guess who just came back after a many months trip. Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Nice and tanned from a warmer climate. Is it there? No. Or here? Yeah. Like that. Jai Ma. So we can go through and we have to see the nature of the goddesses that are mentioned, Śacī, Sita, and Satī, and because just thinking by rotating the different forms of different goddesses, the different forms and names and gunas of the goddess Kālī, and the different goddesses, this is auspicious to the mind. We're called to think about these forms, but then we also have to think. What was that? Is it? Yeah. Nobody. So, Śacī. This is a name. This is the name for Indra's wife, right? And Indra, the king of heaven, right? And so, actually, whenever I say Indra is the king of heaven, or Indra is the king of the gods, maybe close the door, perhaps, sir. You say Indra is the king of the gods. What do we mean by that? Indra has not. Indra's calling. Tell us he is, in fact. Indra's gotten a bad rap the last couple 1,000 years, actually, right? Like one time, actually, it's an interesting thing. At one time, Indra was very popular, right? Now, he was like there's more hymns in the Vedas to Indra than any other deity. His position, he was the main worship deity, and you can see he's very important. He's even the way he's come down to us. He's a god of weather, of the atmosphere, of rain, and you can see that's kind of important. Especially, we are so disconnected from these things. I can't say, oh, now we don't like so dependent. We're 100% dependent. As you can see, California is burning because the rains are 2 weeks late. After a warm summer. So we're definitely dependent on rain, and so the god of rain is very important. But he's not just a god of rain. In the Vedas, he's a god of rain. But and then, as his personality develops, he becomes the king of the gods, the god of gods in a certain sense. But then what happens is an interesting thing. If most of us have if we watched like the TV dramas like Devangita Mahadev and the Mahabharata and some of these. Indra doesn't always look good in the stories. In the Puranas, Indra he's egotistical. He's a symbol of the ego because actually he's the leader, the controller, the king, and he takes himself very seriously and he thinks he's God, right? And on most of the stories, he's not a god, right? Like just now, yesterday or day before yesterday, we celebrated, or last couple of days ago, we celebrated Govardhan Puja, right? This is the day after Diwali, and in the story. In the ancient times, so the story it's in the Bhagavatam, and where the yearly cow herders, dependent on rains, obviously, for their grasses, for their cows and their milk, they were going to do a puja to Indra, right? That's showing that maybe Diwali used to be an Indra puja. You can see these things have migrated considerably, and so they were going to do a big yajna for Indra, and then so the story goes, little Krishna says, at 6 or 7 years old, there he is very. Convincing argument as what does Indra have to do with anything, right? It's like we're not getting anything from Indra. We're getting things. Actually, the cows are giving the reason the grasses grow that the cows can eat is because of cow dung, and the cows are providing cow dung, right? Of course, rain's also required, but anyway, this is the way the argument's going on. And actually, so better we just worship the cows, and actually, that hill. Govardhana means hill of Govar. Govar means cow dung. It's a cow poop covered mountain. That's what Govardhan means. In case you're wondering how to we're like that. And so there's a mountain where our cows graze, and that's always covered. And so the mountain of cow dung, or covered in cow dung. Cow dung is actually where we're getting everything. We cook our food on cow dung. We nourish our fields with cow dung. If there's, of course, the grasses come because of cow dung. Right. Therefore, better we just worship the cow dung, the hill, the mountain of cow dung and the cow, right? And so, so they do like this, and in the classic style, Indra like what? I'm not being worshipped because if Indra is God, he's definitely not God. He definitely thinks he's very important, right? In the story, and so he says, "I'll show you," and then he begins to drown. Of course, this is not the first time the angry god decides to drown them out when people disobey him, right? So he sends days of rain, and the story goes, Krishna lifts up the mountain with his pinky, with his left hand, and holds it up for so many days. And Indra like, oh my God, well, he must not be a normal little boy. I don't know who he is, but I can't drown the inhabitants. I'm trying to drown the world, and this little boy is lifting up a mountain like an umbrella. And so the story goes, very charming, beautiful story. It's one of my favorite holidays, the season, the Go Puja and Govardhan Puja, very, very important. Right. So if we have to be careful how we do, but there is an anthropological reality of the way these stories are being developed. This is a big transition from Indra worship to a new cult, not using the word cult in a pejorative sense, right? This Vasudeva Krishna that we can even see historically when his worship began to become more popular, and so you have to, in a certain sense. Either it happens naturally, or I'm not saying that Krishna didn't lift up a mountain and didn't humiliate Indra, and Indra realized he's definitely not God, Krishna's God. That definitely happened. But it's also simultaneously true that this also these texts and stories came during a transition in religious culture, when the worship of the old pantheon, the Vedic pantheon, got replaced by a Puranic pantheon, right? Like Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma. and their incarnations, right, became more important than Indra and Varuna and Agni and like the we consider like the Vedic gods. So the Vedic gods are still there, but they have to know they're no longer the focus, right? Same thing with Krishna dancing on humiliating Kālī, the serpent, right? Where that could be seen. We also have Kālī. We have in our courtyard a beautiful murti of Krishna dancing on the hoods of Kālī, humbling the snake Kālī. Right. This could also actually at the time Naga worship was much more. We talked about Naga worship a while back, right? Naga worship was way more important than we can imagine it now with Hinduism and Vedanta and Puranas and the way they are now. The way that we think our Hindu thoughts now are different than they were 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, right? So it's interesting. So, anyways, Indra is at one time was really important. That's the main thing, right? And his Shakti is also very important, right? Who is his wife, and what's his? And so Śacī, I have a hard put that the right sh, the Śacī, also another names of Indrani, the wife of Indra. There's other names you can give her. Excuse me. Mahendri is another name in the Chandi. Aindri in the Chandi, Mahendri, Maha-Indri, these different words like that. And so Śacī, it's interesting because she's very important, right? There's a story how she becomes a wife of Indra, and what's her qualities and nature, and these are very important. But it's also really important of what her name means, and what her inclusion, her connection with Indra as a primary consort. This is, as scholars are looking at these things, I'm presenting what is the important move. It's a very important move for Shaktism in general. Even though Indra is not primary, his Shakti is barely, it's one of the matrikas, so she's still included in our pujas and like that. In the Chandi, she's a matrika, but her inclusion as the spouse of Indra is very important. We'll see it in Tantra in general, and Shaktism especially. So it comes, the Śacī comes from the same root as Shakti, right? So it's another way of saying Shakti, right? It's a derivative of the same root. So Śacī means Shakti. So what Shakti means, energy, it means power, right? But Shakti, in this sense, in the period where her stories and predominance and this name becomes popular, Shakti is connected with this idea of Shakti and Shaktiman. Right, you have Shakti is energy, and Shaktiman, the controller, the energetic, the one who's energetic, right? And Shakti, as we know grammatically, is a feminine word, and Shaktiman is a masculine word. So you can see there's a gendered, and in Sanskrit and Hinduism is a very gendered. Everything it's in a gendered world, right? So Shakti becomes the energy, and the one who can, and then there's somebody whose energy it is. Right, the energy and the energetic, right? So you can see this becomes power and the powerful, power and the wielder of power, right? And you can see this is usually what happens when you have like Shiva and Shakti, Shiva and Parvati, Vishnu and Lakshmi, right? You have Vishnu's God, and Lakshmi is his energy that he controls. It's his energy, right? So we can trace this idea a lot. It's been traced. Let me put it that way. It's been traced to the raising of Śacī as an important goddess connected to Indra, because Indra in the stories has many wives, many Shaktis, right? But now she becomes the primary, the most important. So now you have, with this elevation, we can perhaps use that language. Now there's a primary Shakti. Out of all in the stories, as all the wives of Indra, she becomes the main wife, right? And so you have that. You still have somebody that you have Indra, the controller, and Indrani, the one controlled, right? But still that one controlled is the primary, the most important. So now we don't have like Shakti as like the general power of Shiva. Now you have Parvati as the personification, the most, and then once you have that, then we can investigate what that Shakti is, and how controlled she actually is. Because the problem with the Shakti Shaktiman dichotomy, right? There's a lot of things. I mean, it's foundational, but it's also, when it's worked out, you can see where it can be worked out problematically, where nature becomes something to be controlled by, we're masters of nature, for instance, right? So like Kālī, right? She's also Shakti. She's one of her names, Shakti, right? She's energy, and who's she the Shakti of, right? Śacī is the Shakti of Indra, right? Here, both the power, the energy, the wife, the consort, and all those different meanings of it. But Indra is like Kālī. If she's a Shakti of Indra, she's of Shiva. In the image, she's standing on Shiva, right? Not sitting like this, albeit like an obedient wife of Shiva, right? So the position has been shown in the image, right? Right. So the question in Shaktism, especially, because a Shakta, a follower, a worshipper of Shakti, is somebody who gives precedent to Shakti. In the dichotomy of Shakti and Shaktiman, you could say there is no powerful without power. To say that that the powerful is important, and the powerful is the one that wields power. Without power, there's no powerful, right? And so the story, you can see the language changes when it comes to Kālī and the true Shakti tradition. Without Shakti, Shiva can't even stir; he becomes Shava, right? He becomes like corpse, right? So what type of powerful person is? Without me, you're nothing, right? Rather than you're the one that you're my power, I'm the power. To say I'm your power, right? It's the same I'm power, right? And then you can take that, you can push that a little bit more than in the theme of the Kālī Sahasranāma, for sure. The school of Tantra that it springs from is Shakti is Shaktiman. The powerful is the power is the powerful. There's no difference, right? Even talk where Shiva and Shakti are the same. It's like they're not two beings; they're one being, right? And so Kālī she is power, and she is the powerful, right? So anyways, this is the reason I'm bringing this is a big theological important point, a foundational thing, but a lot of it is considered to start with the elevation of Śacī as an important, because if Indra's important, his spouse or his power, his energy becomes important, and then the idea of the primary Shakti and then what that nature is begins to develop. It's interesting, in early texts, before she is connected with Indra, right? She's seen, very interesting, like an evil spirit, right? She's considered, she's not a lot of, like, Satī has a precursor before the Ramayana. She has Sita has an existence outside of the Ramayana and pre-Ramayana. So does Indrani, Satya Mata. So she's and she is the daughter of a demon. Let me think. I think I hopefully wrote down the name of the demon. Oh, I forget. I can't believe I may have forgotten to write it down. Oh, Paloma. One of her name is Palomi, the daughter of Paloma, and so in there's a story where Indra fights this demon Paloma, and he steals his daughter, right, and joins her into his concubines or harem or into like this of his like that. But even though he killed her father, right, she falls in love with him and accepts him, and she becomes the primary wife. In the story, that's the way it comes, like this, right? But her nature, in her ancient nature and in the stories developed, she's considered very prideful, right, egotistical, jealous, competitive, right? It's one of her natures. And you can see that's connected. If she's the Shakti of Indra, this is Indra's qualities. So she's Indra's qualities, right? So without Indra's qualities of being like the controller and the leader and the ruler and the ego, and all the stories develop where he becomes egotistical and thinks he's really important, right? Without those qualities, there's no Indra. The qualities make Indra. So she is Indra's quality. You can see how the development of the Shakti points to the qualities like this. In Tantra, she is worshipped as part of the Matrikas. In the Chandi, there is a great battle where who's the Shumba against Shumba and Nishumba, right? And his armies that Devi manifests the various. Actually, in the battle, the different gods, the Shaktis, the forms of the gods come out of the gods and take on feminine forms. So. In Aindri is the way she's described in the Chandi. She looks just like Indra. She rides an elephant. She holds a thunderbolt. She's dressed like him, like this. Then there's Vaishnavi, who looks just like Vishnu. She rides Garuda. She has a conch and disc, right? Kastoba gem, the whole thing, right? Then you even have Varahi. Looks like who has a form of a boar. You have Narashingi, half man, half lion, half woman, half lion. Right, half lioness. I don't know what to don't know what pronouns Narashingi wants to use. She has her own. It gets very complicated with the matrikas, right? Shiva, then Maheshwari, right? You have all these interesting forms. So they're the forms of the classical male gods. This is very interesting, because we've mentioned this in our various talks, yearly talks on the Chandi. I think this is really important. In the story, in the hymn at the end of the Chandi, when the Narayani Stuti, when the gods are praying and glorifying for what she's done, one of the things they say, "O Narashinghi," right? You who killed the demon Narashinga, right? Or "O Varahi, you who lifted up the earth on your tusks." Right, in the Chandi, Narashinghi doesn't kill Hiranyakashipu. No, it doesn't kill Hiranyakashipu, right? And Varahi does not lift the earth. Varahi, they fight the army of Shumba Nishumba, right? So it's not just what that's hidden saying. This is a true Shakta text, right? Is that when Narashinga killed Hiranyakashipu, it was his Shakti that did it. Right, it's Narashinghi killed Narashinga in the form of Narashinghi killed Hiranyakashipu in the form of Narashinga, right? Varahi lifted the earth in the form of Varaha, like this, right? So the Shakti is again it's not the Narashinghi is not the wife of Narashinga, it's the Shakti of Narashinga, right? So here even Śacī in a certain sense is not the wife of Indra, it's the Shakti of Indra. It's Aindri. Right, so like this. So again, you can see this development of the Shakti idea, and to be becoming independently important, and to some all important, right? The Shakti. So in the Matrikas, Aindriya is there, and she's glorified and fights like that. And even in the Kālī yantra and the Sri yantra, there her Sīta is there, and there she's connected with the. Actually, interesting in the because. Śacī is the spouse of Indra. It's Aindri, but Aindri in the Chandi, although described like that in Tantra, is seen as the Shakti of Bhairava. So it gets even more complicated. So Bhairava, the Ashta Bhairavas have the Ashta Matrikas as their spouse, right? So Bhairava, Lord Shiva, the fierce form of Shiva, takes on 8 forms, the 8 directions. Right? I forget which. Which. It's in the Kālī yantra, I mentioned the Kālī yantra puja. It's there. The Ashta Bhairava, actually Bhairava Jayanti is coming up this month, at the end of the month. There's a very important celebration of this fierce form of Shiva. But his 8 forms, their spouses or Shaktis are the Matrikas. So it's interesting. So is it the wife or energy or Shakti or strength or consort of Indra? Or is it, here Kālī, these are her forms, and Kālī is always associated with Shiva as Bhairava, interestingly enough. Another name, what this name, Śacī, find it? Bhishana Bhairava. There's one of the forms. You know which direction? Where is north? That's north? He's over here, in case you're wondering. Bhishana Bhairava and at north. This is east, south, west, north. Thank you. Interesting enough, because Indra in the directions is towards the east. So his Shakti shows that she's not only his Shakti. She's transcend. She was an ancient. She was seen as a daughter of a demonic spirit at one time. Was elevated in the stories as a spouse of Indra. That caused the elevation of the very idea of Shakti and Shaktiman, right? And now she's transcended even connections with Indra. Now she's connected to Bhairava. She sits in a different direction. She's not even sitting near Indra. There's a couple people in between them in directions. Very interesting, the development of these ideas. And that's important to think. We try to find a systematic interpretive tool to understand all the stories and all the deities. I don't think there is such a system, right? They all developed in their own way and interacted with each other and influence each other. So, Śacī. So the next name is Sita. Sita is a little more, we know more about Sita. Anybody know what Sita means? Śacī means energy. Oh, it also means eloquence, right? It also means grace, right? So this is another quality. You can see how these developed, these beautiful ideas. But anyway, so what does Sita mean? She came from there. It's close. Burrow, furrow or burrow. That's right. So like when you plow a field, that furrow is called Sita, right? And of course we know there's a story of why she got that name. This is the spouse of Lord Rama, and so in the Ramayana she's considered an incarnation, mysterious who Rama, and therefore even more mysterious who Sita is. But in the later development was when Rama is Vishnu, clearly Vishnu. Sita is Lakshmi, incarnation of Lakshmi. But she has the name and the deity has a precursor and a more ancient. She's mentioned even in the Rig Veda and other Vedic mantras, right? And there she's equated with a form of goddess of Mother Earth. So she's a form of the Earth Mother, right? And she's associated with fertility, with crops, with farming, this type of connection. So I'll mention a few references of different less known that we know. Ramayana, most people here know. We'll tell the story a little bit for the sake of completion, but most people already know the story of Sita and Ram and their forest being sent to the forest and coming back and being exiled and the fire. We know those stories. So there's stories you probably don't know about where the ancient form of Sita comes. In the Kaushika Sutra, Sita is the wife, not of Vishnu. Like I said, they've migrated. These deities have migrated, right? There's a god of Parjanya, which is an ancient god of rain. So there it's more associated with Indra, interestingly enough, right? It was and she was considered the mother of the gods, mortals, creatures, and she is invoked for growth and prosperity. It's like a fertility, earth-centric type of goddess. And you can see she's associated with the god of rain, and so they already have something about earth and rain, and that's a major theme, right? Because earth and rain together creates fertility and prosperity and growth like this, right? That's going to be a theme in all the Sita things. In Paraskara Sutra, Sita is, again here more explicitly, the wife the wife of Indra, right? So here is Indra's wife is not Śacī, it's Sita, right? In some texts, right? In Paraskara Sutra. And she was offered, in the yagyas, she was offered cooked rice in order to get blessings of prosperity. Actually, you see, usually we offer uncooked rice to the fires, but there's a tradition of offering cooked rice. Sometimes we'll do it, especially for the moon. And it's also very similar when bringing soma down. You offer cooked rice to the fire. We don't do it that often. There's some pujas that we haven't done it in a long time. Cooked rice and barley. The Vajrasaneyi Samhita, right? She is invoked by drawing 4 furrows at in the place of sacrifice. So before a sacrifice is started, what the sacrifice is interaction between the gods and the world, right? The way a sacrifice would be done. And so in a certain sense, when you burrow a field or furrow a field, burrow, I don't know what the right word is you're doing, but when you're doing a sacrifice, it's the same thing. And also when we do our Vedic, when we do our homa, we're doing it the very time, we draw a yantra. But there's a way of doing it where you draw a line this way and you draw 4 lines this way. It was a special weapon, with a special blade, and you're creating this drawing of these lines was her part of the puja, right? In this text, and that is creating like the original Purusha Shukta sacrifice, where the being of the world itself is separated into different parts, and it's references to that. We have the mantras for it, but that's not our style of homa. So I've only done that once or twice years ago when very specific homas had to be done, where we drew those special mandalas. But that's how the drawing, the cutting of the earth, the drawing with a knife, with a blade, to create the field of sacrifice and therefore the field of prosperity and harvest is Sita, right? The Harivamsa Purana, that's a very famous devotional text, right? Sita is said to be a form of Arya. Arya is early name for the earth, Mother Earth. So again, these are just to show you that these are names of the earth, and because Sita means this plowing, that combination of not just the earth, it's the earth in abundant not fertility is not the right word. When you get crops, and I lost the word. But you see, so it's an interesting idea that this is also it's the play between her husband in both these stories is Indra, or an early or even earlier rain deity, right? So it's a combination between earth and sky. Right, that combination, and here the male and the female, right? Man and nature, or God and man. There's all these ways you can separate this kind of like this, and the plow injects, it creates a situation and injects a seed. You can see this is birth type symbolism, right? But also, it also implies this combination between earth and sky, or man and nature, or man and woman, and all those type of stuff is here. It's done ritualistically, like that carving of these lines. It's not done violently. It's done with mantras, right? When Sita's father is Janaka. When Janaka, what was he doing? He was plowing. He's not a farmer. He's a king, right? Why was he plowing? This is even now in Vedic times, and even now in there's rituals where the king, with a golden plow, does the first plowing for harvest, right? Because he has to do his part, and so it's done respectfully. It's a worship of nature, right? While it's in one sense it's your it's a recognition that it takes both nature and man's efforts, humans' efforts, right, in order to create abundant crop. Otherwise, the stories say, and the mantras say, that the earth will withhold her. She will not let her treasures out. And there's another, in the Bhagavatam, there's a story of King Prithu Maharaj, and it said the earth became so upset with humankind's behavior towards her, that she closed her womb, right? Seeds would not grow, and waters would not, springs would not flow, gems could not. I mean, all the treasures that we require so much from the earth, right? Not just plant life, and there's a whole thing where Prithu had to. We even got the name for the earth as Prithvi, is because of his relationship with the earth. He had to arrange a situation that she would be honored properly, so that she would give. Mankind, we need her blessings, right? But the thing is, as you can see, we can force them. We can force ourselves on her, literally, right? But at a certain point, that backfires. It has to be done respect. So this is part of the worship of Sita in the ancient times, was about this type of respectful, worshipful recognition of how crops and fertility and abundance and agriculture works, right? And so let's bring that to the story of Janaka. Janaka is starting to with his golden trowel to break the earth, and then somebody says, "Oh, there's a baby there. Careful!" And they see that within the front of the earth, there's so you can see her name is, and they name her Sita because she comes from the burrow of the flower. I've lost the word already. What is it? Furrow of the earth, right? But also she's the earth goddess, so naturally she comes out of the earth. At the end of her life, she also gets reabsorbed into the earth, right? So a few things. There's a few of her names besides Sita. The most common is Janaki because she's found by Janaka, right? Another one is what's one? Vaidehi. So Vaidehi, it's interesting. So Videhi or Vaidehi is his King Janaka. There's many King Janakas. It's like there's Vyasa. all the texts written by. There's many Vyasas also, right? Historically, Vyasa is a compiler and organizer of scripture, right? But we consider them to be one spirit of Vyasa. So similarly, Janaka, there's so many King Janakas, and they don't like the King Janaka of, but all of them are considered sages, right? Of self-knowledge, of great knowledge. So one of Janaka's names as Videha is one who is transcendent the body idea. So he was somebody who had no body consciousness as a yogi, as a practitioner, as a sage, as a rishi, right? Like King Janak. And so his child is the daughter of he who has no body consciousness, which is interesting because he didn't come from her body, his body. She didn't come from his body, which is also like she's the daughter not of the body. Another thing, she didn't come from her adopted parents are not her parents, right? She comes from Mother Earth itself, or she is Mother Earth itself, right? So that's very interesting that she comes from Mother Earth, but she is the Earth. So is she born from the Earth, or she gives birth to all? We're her children. Her parents are her children, and that gets very weird because that theme is mixed into all kinds of stuff in the Sita story. I'm not going to tell the main. Everybody knows the main Sita story, right? I love the main Sita story too, but just for the sake of being different and filling. So there's one interesting. Correct. So in the Adbhuta Ramayana, right? We were talking this morning also about the different Ramayanas. We were talking to Nico about this, and there's, of course, we all know there's Valmiki Ramayana. There's Sri Ramakrishna like the Adhyatma Ramayana. That's a very Vedantic, non-dualistic Ramayana. The spiritual Ramayana. We have Tulsidas's Ram Charita Manas, right? Like this. So these are to become very popular. But there's actually more than 400 existent text Ramayana. Some of them are Buddhist, some of them are Jain, right? There are all kinds of different communities. There's some, of course, in Thailand. There's so many in Thailand, in Bali. Right? They have their own versions of it. And there's a Jain Ramayana where Ram does not kill Ravana because Ram is a Jain master. And killing is against, so Lakshman kills Ravana in that story, because that could not. So the story is told with a different intention, right? And so there's unlimited oral renditions and versions of it that have come down through different oral traditions, independent of the written text. But in the Devane version, Sangadasa, he is a Jain writer. He has a version of Ramayana. And in the Adbhuta Ramayana, which is a Shakta, Adbhuta means miraculous or weird, strange, mysterious, and that's truly mysterious. We've mentioned some stories from the from the that Adbhuta Ramayana. But there, it's interesting. So there, Ravana's wife. Now let me tell you how we do this. Ravana is, astrologers predict that Ravana's daughter will be cause his death. Now imagine that you go to your Vedic your royal astrologer, and he says, "Oh yes, your daughter just born by your primary wife, she'll be the cause of your death." So he freaks out, as usually would do, and so he didn't just kill her immediately, but that he wouldn't get a good story, right? So he abandons her, right, and tells his ministers, "Go bury her in some field, let her drown, let her die." You can see that's even now. People are. There was of course, a lot of these may be propaganda also, but people not wanting a female child, they put out in the field and let it die. You can see it's that type of thing. But this time, not because of the financial stress that would cause, and that he was like, she's going to be cause of my death. Put her out in the field and die, right? And then just so happens, a little bit later, Janaka plows a field and pops up and sees little baby. Well, that means that Sita is Ravana's daughter in that story. So that's a very strange story, right? Adbhuta Ramayana, that's there.
It's different from Adhyatma.
Yes, totally different.
No, but you mentioned Master.
He liked the Adhyatma Ramayana. Yeah, it's a Vedantic type of orientation text, But the Adbhuta Ramayana has all kinds, and Sita has a very exalted position in the Adbhuta Ramayana. Actually, I think by saying that Sita is Kālī, it directly references to the Adbhuta Ramayana and the like, because there Sita manifests as Kālī. So there's
like a Shakta.
It's a highly Shaktified Ramayana text, right? So she's adopted by Janaka, right, and then eventually, as predicted, Janaka tries to, then Ravana steals Sita, right? And you can see for that horrible sin of trying to abduct his own daughter, right? Not realize his own daughter, that becomes the cause of his death, right? So his daughter is the cause of her death. Ravana's queen, Mandodari, right? She also, in another version, told the story. She predicted that, or not predicted, almost like she was upset with Ravana. She says, "Our child will be your death," right? So in that version, so some versions like that, not astrologers. The mother itself wants her dire, because Ravana is, I won't go into many details in mixed crowd, but Ravana can be a little bit of a scoundrel, and the wife had reasons to fight back as the way she could, and so she cursed in a certain sense that our daughter will be the cause of your death, right? And destroy your lineage like this. And so Ravana then in that version put her in a jeweled box and put it there, and the same thing. Then Janaka found it. There's another version. Let's see if I maybe have written it down. The name. Bhamananda, Bhamadala. Bhamadala was a son of Ravana, and therefore the brother of Sita, right? And he, not knowing who was what, he fell in love with Sita, right? He says, I want to steal and marry Sita, right? You can see that didn't work out, and eventually, when he realized that, when the big revelation that who Sita was. He says he became a Jain monk. Of course, Ramayana is supposed to have taken place a long time ago. This is one of the Jain Ramayanas. This whole thing is getting ugly. I'm going to become a Jain. So he became a Jain ascetic. So it's interesting that Sita, very interesting. So so Sita in the when Janaka found Sita, he noticed she had extraordinary strength, right? like for instance, we all know the story that the Shiva's bow. When we pick up, the story of the Swayambara of Sita that only he could lift. But actually, the little girl was regularly. The reason that came up because she could lift Shiva's bow, right? 'Cause remember, she's the earth. She holds she holds everything. Of course, Vishnu holds the earth, so he can also. But even she could lift Shiva's bow without any problem. So she was always considered quite amazing and had extraordinary qualities. And then when literally a very long story, right? When she marries Lord Ram, and of course goes into exile and that whole difficult story, and so she's worship. So Sita becomes the I don't want to say the symbol of the sacrificing, dutiful wife, right? Very where she follows her husband. I mean, there's dialogues or monologues in Ramayana where she's describing, it's like, I'm nothing without Ram. I shouldn't even be alive. I mean, this type of extreme. Ram is my husband, is God himself, and of course, she's taken as a theme, right? I know one person. He says that I was told, a woman, I was told to see my like Sita saw Ram, to see my husband as God. And he says, when my husband begins to act like Ram, I shall see him like Ram. Until then, I know what his real nature is. It takes both to have that type of devotion. Requires also that type of nobility, where the husband can be God and the wife can be the goddess. Like this requires quite a bit. But Sita is often is not just often, is very much presented this way, and she gives a special blessing that she tolerated so much, right? She sacrificed so much and tolerated so much. We know willingly, unwillingly, she tolerated so much, and therefore her special Shakti is that of tolerance. She gives tapasya Shakti, right? She gives the ability to do tapasya. That's one of her blessings. Sri Ramakrishna saw Sita in a vision, and it says that in the part of the vision, of course, two things happen as a result of this vision, interestingly enough, is that he saw her wearing certain bracelets that he's never seen before. And so later, when he had bracelets made for Holy Mother, he had them designed like the bracelets that he saw Sita wearing. This was not a known design at the time. This is not the type of married woman bracelets, but he had it designed after the vision of Sita. And he also said that when he had the vision of Sita and she absorbed into him, right, that she left him his smile. So Sita, if you look at Sri Ramakrishna smiling, this is an interesting, that's what he said, that she left me her smile. Interesting. So at the end of the story, right, let me make sure I get this. Oh, this is an interesting thing. We have to tell one of the difficult stories of the banishment of Sita, right? That after they came back and she was tested and they came back to Ayodhya, Rama heard or overheard or something was reported to him. You know the story of a washerman who made some comment that don't think I'm like Ram. Right, that you can just go to anybody, you can go to any man you want, and I'll just overlook it. I'm not weak like Ram. He made a statement like this, right? And it got back to him, and Ram realized, even though he knew Sita was innocent of any wrongdoing, living in Ravana's house, that the story goes that in the core story that he exiled in order to protect the reputation of the kingdom, like this, right? So that washerman, there's an interesting backstory, very strange. That you get these all kinds of news stories you probably haven't heard. Sita herself, as the story goes, was cursed, right? And so she was playing with two. Let me see if I get this right. She caught a pair of birds when she was young, and the birds were talking about Lord Ram, how wonderful Lord Ram is, and of course she could, being Earth goddess, she could understand what birds are saying, right? And the female bird was pregnant, right? and requested Sita, I'm pregnant, please let me go. Right? But Sita wouldn't let her go. She wanted to play with the bird. So the bird cursed her. Like, when you're pregnant, you'll be separated from your husband. So there's a story like this. Interesting that you actually all these stories are there's always a story that leads to it, right? You see, even like when Draupadi called out to Krishna and had unlimited cloth, like this, right? But there's a backstory to that too. As Ramakrishna says, that there's once a sadhu bathing in the river in public, and his kopin came off, and he was embarrassed to come up, not knowing what to do. So she tore some sari and gave him. Right, so that karma led to this karma. This karma leads to this. There's always all these intricate stories. So, anyways, it's interesting. So that male bird, interesting enough, was born as the washerman. That's why I want to bring it up. That washerman who talking. So he's had it. He's not happy with Sita. So anyway, in this it says Sita is Kālī. Right, that's the main thing. So in the Adhyatma Ramayana and other versions, there's a version of Ramayana where Ravana. How many heads does Ravana have? Only 10? That's not a very big Ravana. There was other Ravanas where Ravana had 10,000 heads, right? It's like, there's a good story, which I don't have time to tell, but I'm going to tell anyways, where one time Hanuman, it's at the end of Ram Lila, right? And Ram's famous ring, the famous ring, and where did you get that ring fame, right? Falls off because, Ram is, Sita's not cooking for him anymore, so it falls off, and it goes down into a crack. And he says, Hanuman, go get my ring. And Hanuman becomes really small and jumps in, and he falls miles and miles, and he lands on a pile of golden rings, all with Ram's insignia. He says, this is unusual. And he looks up, and there he sees Lord Ram and Sita on a golden throne. Right, now this is also unusual. And Ram says, actually, in every age, every Treta Yuga I'm born on planet Earth. But millions of planets I'm being born. Ravana is being born, I'm being born, you're also being born. Right? Different people play Hanuman's part. That's a way of justifying the variations of the stories. It could just be the change of story, or there's a different lila, it's a different story. Right? And so at the end of every lila, I tell you I lose my ring, and I tell you, and this is how I let you know. I let you in on the secret that this is coming to a close. So in this version of the Ramayana, this time Ravana had 10,000 heads, and Sita waited for her year to Ram come rescue me, right? Give him the glory, and as the dutiful, obedient, and adoring wife that she pretends to be in the story, right? And Rama can't kill Ravana. And even in the regular Ramayana, Ravana is not easy to kill. He's actually quite glorious, right? He has performed much tapasya. And I always like to think there's one scene in Valmiki's Ramayana when Ram first sees Ravana on the battlefield, dressed in white and silver. He's like, wow, he's impressive, right? That's regular, only 10-headed Ravana. Imagine 10,000-headed Ravana. And so Sita couldn't kill Ravana. This is the problem. I mean, Sita could always kill Ram. Ram cannot. I'm ready to ruin the story before I'm telling the story. I'm not a good storyteller today. Rama couldn't kill. And so finally Sita goes, okay, enough of this. Right? And she manifests as Ma Kālī. And then she kills off the 10,000 heads of Ravana. Right? And then goes back to being Sita. Right, so also within this story, it's a neat story. I always first heard the story. There's the Milk Daddy Baba, remember Milk Baba? You ever be here? There was I think he's passed away, an elderly sadhu, big. He had longer jata than Ananda. He had he was like 5 feet tall, but his jata was like 9 or 10 feet, across the whole room, And he gave a beautiful. He only drank milk, so it was known as milk Duttari Baba or Milk Baba. That was his tapasya for so many years. But he told us that story. He said in Kālī, oh, this is Sita's rupa, right? He told him we've never heard this story. So he's the first. Many years ago we've heard this story. So, but also shows you. Let's bring it back to the Indrani Śacī. She's the wife, right? And she's glorified for her humility, her patience, her dedication, her obedience, her but who is she really? right? She's playing this part, but she is the Shakti, right? To say she's the Shakti of Ram means she's the Shakti of Ram. There is no Ram without her. Ram, just like there's no Shiva without Shakti, there's no Ram without Sita, like this. What time is it now? Anybody know? 6:08. Oh, okay, I'm still okay. Swami Vivekananda, he believed, he made a statement that Swami Vivekananda loves Sita. You can actually do, if he has, I had a small book, little collection of all Swamiji's statements about Sita. Right, he was the ideal, and you can see it's the ideal of Indian womanhood. I was like, oh great, another person telling Indians to be women to be obedient and worship their husband like that. But all those qualities plus the strength, nobility, all the quality, he illustrated all these qualities he made what the statement. He said that if all the literature of the past and the world literature of the future were thoroughly exhausted, if you search all the world's literature, you'll never find anybody like Sita. He thought the character of Sita was so singularly unique, right? And then he says, this is a direct quote, all our mythology may vanish, even the Vedas can be made apart, and our Sanskrit language could be forgotten forever. But as long as there will be 5 Hindus living, there'll be 5. As long as 5 Hindus are still alive, Sita will be the ideal. He considered that foundational to Indian psychology, the very heart of like this. So these are 2. Now we have the third. I think we have time to plow through. No pun intended. To plow. I'll Sita through the. But you see, the plowing is a very fascinating image. You get to something quickly. It's very fascinating. It's very good exercise. Yes, I imagine. Then Satī. So anybody know what Satī means? It's a name for Parvati's first incarnation, right? Before is Parvati.
Self-immolation.
Well, there is Satī as a verb, right? But actually Satī, the true root of the word, it has 2 meanings. One is same we get the word Sat, or Satya, means truth. So Satī is a feminine word for truth, one like that. But a more common meaning, that's like a classic Sanskrit Vedic meaning, right? A more common meaning is that of like good, faithful, noble, right? So like Satī Satī is a title for a noble woman, or in connection a noble wife, or a faithful wife is Satī, right? But the root of the word goes further back to just truth itself, right? And so Satī is the first. Of course, it's easier to connect Satī with Kālī than the other goddesses that we're mentioning, because Kālī is considered a form, and in certain stories she's a form of Satī or Parvati. These are more obvious connections as the Shakti are connected to Shiva. So Satī is the daughter of who? Daksha and Prasuti. I read it down. Prasuti, the wife of Daksha. And Daksha is a Prajapati. A Prajapati is we get the word progeny, right? Progenitor, so these are, we don't have exactly, I guess, I don't know, in Western tradition we don't have quite something like a progenitor, but you have secondary, like even Brahma his name is Prajapati also, right? He's the original Prajapati, the one who creates the world, but then he creates progenitors of mankind. Certain when you create rishis, you create devas, you create, so this is the way the Vedic idea or the Puranic idea of how creation comes. And so Daksha was he's Prajapati Daksha, and he was in charge of creating civilization, right? And especially like Brahminical culture, like orthodox, rabbinical orthodoxy, the Vedic, we could think of Vedic civilization. We have that ideal, whatever that means, whatever it ever meant, right? That Prajapati Daksha was the creator of that, and he had many daughters, and he proposed. So, anyways, he knowing what he needed to do, he prayed. He's a son of Brahma, right? And he knew, in order to do what he needed to do, he needed the blessings of Parashakti, of the supreme power, right? And so he did tapasya, thousands of years tapasya, and had a vision of Parashakti, the Jagannath, the mother of the world. And he says, please, he requested you. He knew who she was. That's what makes the story so painful, right? He knew she was the goddess that he invoked for a particular purpose, right? He knew he needed that Shakti, that she needed, because without Shakti, without power, without Shiva and Shakti, there's no world. There is nothing. You need the original Shakti, the Adi Shakti, Adya Shakti, Adi Shakti. And so she agreed. He says, I will be born as your daughter, as one of your daughters, right? But if I ever feel insulted, I shall leave. Very interesting. This is a big Shakta, a good message for Shaktism in general, right? And for basic behavior in general. And that is the thing, is like when Shakti is insulted, she leaves, right? I will leave, and she even says, I'll disown you. That's a very strong language, right? And she's okay, maybe so. Please be born as my daughter. Please be born. And so she's born and grows up in his house, right? But what happened? There's a whole series of stories. But Daksha, Prajapati Daksha is a devotee of Vishnu, because Vishnu is Sattva-guna. He is the lord of the Brahminical culture. Go Brahmana Hitayacha, right? The lord of the Brahmins, the beloved of the Brahmins, lover of the Brahmins, of the Sattvic culture, right? And so and there's a whole series of things, how there's a fight between Shiva and Brahma, who is his father, the whole story. But how you ever get there, he ends up hating Shiva. And we all know, we all seen the movies. I saw 800 and something volumes of how much he hated Shiva. Whole summer, a couple summers of just how much he really hated Shiva. So, but she was born to marry Shiva, right? She did tapasya to get her to be born to marry Shiva, but now he hates Shiva for whatever reason, right? And he's trying to fight like this. But of course, we all know she marries Shiva, right? And he's not pleased with it, and so many insults back and forth. But eventually, actually, one of there's too many stories to tell. I won't tell that story. We all know this. We all know that at one point she goes off to live with Lord Shiva, and Daksha decides to perform a grand sacrifice, right? Daksha's yajna, right? Daksha, and one of Kālī's name is Daksha Yajna Vinashini, the destroyer of Daksha's sacrifice. So this is how the story is told, right? So he performs, but he's doing it to purposely insult Shiva. He's doing a ritual to insult Shiva, right? And it's interesting because there's deep meaning to this, right? And in a certain sense, by so doing, to insult Satī. And he invites all the gods and goddesses and doesn't invite Shiva, right? And so Satī sees, in the Bhagavatam, there's a very nice version of the story, Srimad Bhagavatam, where Satī notices all these aerial spaceships. We'll use that language for the Too Much History channel, I'm sorry. It's gotten ridiculous. But anyway, aerial, what's chariot? Think of the word, I'm looking for chariots. Golden flying chariot. We'll just say like that, as I mentioned. And he sees all the gods are all dressed up with their wives, and they're going somewhere. They're going towards their home. He says, something must be going on, right? What's happening? And Shiva says, don't worry about what's happening. Doesn't matter what's happening, right? Only pain, even if you investigate, it's going to be painful, right? He's only insulted me like that. But she really wanted to go, right? She finds out, we can go, No, we cannot. It's not good. Let's go. No, I'm not invited. You should never go where you're not invited. It's a good message. Don't go where you're invited. We're not wanted, probably not to go. He said, but at least I can go, right? Because I'm the daughter of the house, and the daughter of the house can always go home. That's a Vedic injunction, right? It's a cultural norm and a scriptural injunction, right? That the daughter of the house is always welcome. I was told actually two things: that the daughter can always go to the father's house, and the disciple can always go to the guru's ashram without restriction. That's generally these are two principles. You always said that. When I was told, I'd always write before going to our ashram in India. I'd always write, "With your permission, Guruji, I'm coming." He's like, like you don't need to ask to come, just like our daughters would not have to ask to come home to visit our house. So same principle. So she decides to go, and of course we know the story. Shiva is very much insulted. And therefore she hears the insult of Shiva, and we know that she. But the thing is, there's an interesting thing. One of her name is Dakshayani, right? The daughter of Daksha, and Daksha represents civilization, right? The rules and standards of dharma, of varnashram dharma, right? The rules that he wrote. He wrote these rules, so he's very attached. And Shiva is famous for following none of these rules, right? And actually, so Shiva, he doesn't follow any rules. What's his varna? What's his lineage? What's his gotra? Right? His behavior. He doesn't dress up. He doesn't dress, right? He has unkempt hair. He looks like him. This is your glory, or you look like him. you look like Shiva. I can say that now because I shaved my jata off, but I used to look a little bit more like him. And she couldn't. Anybody else would insult Shiva. Shakti would destroy them, right? But she couldn't, because she is in the system. She is the daughter of Daksha, and therefore bound by the rules of the filial principles of child to parent and like this, right? And so insult after insult, she kept fighting and threatening and crying and screaming, all the different. I mean, it goes over several seasons if you watch it watch the TV version of it, right? Right? It's like, but she couldn't. She could never, because in this body she's a daughter of Daksha, right? And the relationship is there. Right, so it's very confusing. Why did she commit sati as a verb? Why did she burn herself up? Because she even said in one of the versions, it exactly says, "When I'm free of this body, then I'll have no connection to you. Then I can do what I want. Right now I have to do what you want. I'm your daughter, and the father has some say, right? And so when she gave up her body, what happened? Right. Then, of course, she burned up her body. However, we think the versions of the story, and Shiva went wild with grief and anger, and it started one of the versions of the Tandava dance. Right, and he grabbed one of his. There's two versions of the story. One, he grabbed one of his jata and threw it down, and came a very fierce form called Virabhadra. Virabhadra was 10 arms or 10,000 arms, however you want to think of it, right? And he says, "Go kill, destroy that sacrifice and kill Daksha," right? So that's one version of the story. Another version of the story has him tearing off two of his jata and creating Virabhadra and Bhadra Kālī, these two forms, and said, "Go kill Daksha," right? They're both basically the same story, but one of them, the version. So the verse where he tells Virabhadra to go kill, but see Vishnu, it's always very complicated. It gets more complicated. Daksha is a devotee of Vishnu, and he had elicited a boon from Vishnu due to his wonderful work of organizing society, a nice brahminical Vaishnava-oriented society, right? And the thing is that if ever I'm in need, you'll have to come and protect me, right? So when Virabhadra was about to kill Daksha, Vishnu had to, although he knew Daksha had it coming, Vishnu tied Virabhadra up, right? It was a rope, divine rope or snake or something like some divine weapon, right? And so in Shiva, realizing this, he broke off a second and created Bhadra Kālī, go free Virabhadra. So she goes and with her sword cuts off the ropes of Virabhadra, and together they kill. Either way, they both end up killing Daksha. Now it's interesting. As Dakshani, as Satī, she couldn't even talk back to her. She could barely talk back to her husband, right? To her father. But as Kālī, now as Bhadra Kālī, right, free of those things, as the wild Kālī, the Shakti behind everything, no longer bound, no longer restricted by society's rules, even religion's rules, right? Daksha was obliterated. I mean, like what happens that they cut off his head like an animal sacrifice. An animal sacrifice we do to Kālī or Virabhadra, right? Sometimes in some South Indian temples, you'll see chained in the back of the temple, in the southern corner, southwest corner of the temple, deities of Virabhadra and Bhadra Kālī. And they'll be chained because they're so wild. So that, you have to keep them under control. Sometimes they're also like the gatekeepers of temples, sometimes in the front. But this idea of Virabhadra and Bhadra Kālī. When in the version where Bhadra Kālī cuts off the bonds of Virabhadra, Virabhadra is the one that kills Shiva in that version of the story. But she now has more power because of Kālī. Once again, showing that Shakti is the power behind something. He didn't have the power to do it on his own. With Kālī, Virabhadra with Kālī, he can do the thing. So we, many years ago, in our Bhagavatam classes, many years ago, we told the elaborate long story of the Daksha sacrifice, as the version as presented in the Bhagavatam. And that's become the most famous version, right? There's many versions of the story in a lot of details. And so I have probably 20 talks on that story. So if you go back if you're interested, it's a really fascinating topic. And especially because there's a tension, part of it is a tension between society and Shiva, right? The freedom of Shiva comes in contact with the rules of Vedic. In a certain sense, it's a conflict between the Vedic tradition, you could say it like this, if we're careful how we say it, the Vedic tradition and you could say a pre-Vedic tradition or a late Tantric tradition or something like. There's some version you could say like this. You can also, it's between Shaivism and Tantra and Shaivism, Tantric Shaivism and Vaishnavism, which it tends to be more Brahminical, right? So there's many, we can spend hours and hours, we have spent hours and hours talking about this understanding of the story, right? But it's interesting that as the daughter of Daksha, nothing could be done, right? In the Srimad Bhagavatam version, the two sides curse each other before they all get their heads cut off, right? That the Daksha and his attendants, they curse Shiva and his attendants, right, during the part of the battle, right? And they curse each other. One of which the Shiva and his attendants curse Daksha and his descendants, which is society and Brahminical culture, right? That you'll lose all your spiritual qualities. And now everything will be done just for money and for your stomach. And you can see that's our big accusation of the Brahminical class. We think, oh, they're doing from, you have ministers with $100 million in America and bank accounts. These are extreme cases. But even you say, oh, it's like people, you can see some, Panditji, can you offer a flower? Give me 100 rupees. It becomes the accusation or the real nature. It's become degenerated like this. And Daksha's attendants cursed Shiva's attendants that your followers will follow false teaching. Means the Tantras, in case you're wondering. Right? Because this is from their perspective, the Tantras, right, which don't follow the Brahminical structure, right, are false. These are heretical teachings. They're not based upon the Vedas. Something not based upon the Vedas is by nature heresy. Right? This is Ashtika, not Nashtika. Right? So it's interesting. You can see those verses, right? There's 2-3 verses when they're cursing each other. The leftover after Daksha has been killed, they start cursing each other. I think in those curses give the nature of the struggle between the orthodoxy and the I'm not saying none, because Tantra is also orthodox in a different way. You know what I mean? So, Shiva and Daksha. There's much to say. I'll end with in the story of how Satī is literally Kālī. This is a late tantric. Since we've already established the true authenticity or the heresy of the tantras, we shall quote the tantras boldly, whichever way you want to take it, as reject immediately or accept unquestionably. This is your choice, right? So in one of the versions of the story, see, this is often attributed to Parvati, but some versions in the Kālī Purana, this is a story is attributed more to Parvati, where Parvati but in the Vamana Purana is attributed, the same epithet is attributed to Satī. That Satī, Parvati or Satī, originally dark-skinned, and one of her names is Kālī, right? So Kālī means black or dark, right? And in their playfulness, Shiva would tease her about her skin. And she got very upset. And either there's a different version where she did tapasya or she did like that, and she took on a golden form, Gauri. Kālī becomes Gauri, light-skinned, right? There's a lot of things we can think about that. But so that's one thing that literally Parvati and Satī are both named Kālī in the Puranas. Like in the Kālī Purana, when I first read Kālī Purana, right, I thought, oh, this was a story about Kālī like this, right? These are stories of Parvati, because Parvati's name is Kālī. Right, and one of her names. It tells the story how Parvati went from Kālī to Gauri, and like this, right? So related to this story, when Satī wanted to go to the what's it called? To the yajna, to Daksha's sacrifice, Shiva was trying to stop her, right? And she was very upset. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. Right? And Shiva said no, right? And at one point, she gets very angry, and Shiva gets scared. Right, because it's like, I'm going, you can't, because her nature is Shakti. Of course, the story, she knew Daksha had to be killed. This is a lila that this has to happen, right? And now Shiva is in the way, because Shiva knows why let the system go on, let Daksha do what he wants. What does it matter what Daksha's doing? We're in Kailash, he's in actually, where is he? He's in Hadwar. It's not that far. It's over a few mountain ranges. But let him do what he's doing. That world, the known world, is Hadwar and Kailash at the time. Let him do what he wants. But no, he needs. No, I'm going, right? And she gets very upset. And then Shiva doesn't know what to do, and he goes in some direction. And Satī becomes dark like Kālī, right? She becomes black in her anger, right? And Shiva gets scared, and he goes to run away, right, from his Shakti, right? And he goes towards the east, and she takes on one form with the weapons. She goes, and he turns to the north, and he takes on another form with the weapons, and the south, another form with the weapons. I'll tell you which ones. See if you recognize any of this. It's worth it. So she goes to the east and she becomes Sodashi, right? Tripura Sundari, but in the fierce form, right? She goes towards the southeast, where's southeast? Over here, right? She becomes Chinnamasta, takes on the form of Chinnamasta. Then she takes on the form of Bhuvaneshwari, Matangi, Bagalamukhi, Dhumavati, Kamala, Tara, above as Kālī and below as Bhairavi. Right, in all directions. So this is where we get the Dashmahavidyas. This is, of course, Dashmahavidyas as a collection of deities, a fairly late addition to the Tantric canon. But this is a very interesting where Satī literally is Kālī and literally is the Dashmahavidyas. Right. This is so, and actually we worship when we're doing special pujas we have the directional deities of Indra, Agni, Yama. Like we go around like that. But we worship them also. But more esoterically, more internally, we worship the Dashmahavidyas in the 10 directions, right? We're surrounded, and there's Kavacha mantra describe me, Kālī, protect me from behind me, Dhumavati from you surround yourself. Because we are approaching, of course, they're not protecting Shiva, they're attacking Shiva, right? And Shiva goes, okay, you can go what you want, you can do what you want, you can do what you want, right? Because realize that I have you were born for this purpose, right? Like so. Free like that. Another last point I wanna because we'll move on and I won't be able to go back to this, so I'm going a few minutes late. Satī and Parvati. Why did Daksha invoke her in the first place, right? Shiva needs Shakti. Shiva in the stories is an ascetic. He's a world-renouncing yogi, right? And he sits in the Himalayan cave like this, his legs in Padmasana, not touching the floor, literally not touching the floor, right? And he closes his eyes and he sees nothing, right? He ignores Prakriti completely, right? It's pure consciousness, absorbed in consciousness. Within that is even the power to be absorbed in pure consciousness is Shakti. There's an inherent Shakti, right? But if Purusha does not engage Prakriti, Prakriti cannot create, right? It takes just like Satī, like Sita was the earth and sky and the earth together, right? So Shiva and Shakti is required. So you need when Purusha, like in the Sankhya philosophy, Purusha in connection with Prakriti causes Prakriti to vibrate, and therefore the evolutes begin. So in a similar way, when Shiva is conscious of Prakriti or Devi, right? Devi flows. And so when Shiva is meditating with his eyes closed, everything freezes, right? No heat, right? He's in the Himalayas, it's snow. But you see when they're together, what happens? Ice melts. You have rivers. You have fields with wheat growing and sugarcane and banana trees. And, it's like you have and so the purpose of invoking the birth of the Adya Shakti as Satī and then later as Parvati is to make Shiva in the stories a householder, right? He has to become interested in Shakti, right? And so he was reluctant in the stories and he accepted and look what happened, right? Sati is now dead and the whole thing, right? And so what happens again? He goes into 10,000 years of meditation. Forget it. I have my own Shakti. This is his own Shakti. I can just meditate on my own Shakti. That's when you close your eyes. It's not no Shakti. The Shakti is within, not manifested, right? But what the gods needed, pretty soon you have, the Kamadev and the whole thing tried to wake him up, and Parvati is taking birth, and now we have to get him to be interested in Shakti again, externalize Shakti again, and the stories become a householder, and with that union of Shiva and Shakti, there's life, there's prosperity, there's birth. There's movement like this, so that these are some of the themes behind the whole thing. So that Śacī, Sita, and Satī, right? These are three, and then the final name we just took funny is Satya-parāyaṇā. We just end with Satya-parāyaṇā. This is Parayana is to recite. Parayana is the goal, right? It's a different word, right? The goal of something. So the support, the rest, the relief, the final aim, the final end, the thing you aim at, the destination. Kālī is Devi, whose name is all these names, and another 800, almost 800 names coming up, 750 names coming up. Why are we studying all these names? Why are we thinking about? Why are all these stories told? Why are all these rituals done? Why this long, boring talk on three strange goddesses, strange stories about popular goddesses? She's the goal of everything, right? She's the aim and object, as our Guruji would say. The thing we're after, the thing that everything's moving for. She is the truth. She's Satya-parāyaṇā. She's the goal. She's in truth the goal. You can say like that, or she's the truth that we're after. When we're thinking, we're seekers of truth. We want to know the self. We want to These are all descriptions of that truth. Right, the goal of our life, our the reason for our being, the reason for our study, the reason for our aspiration. She is that. Satya-parāyaṇā. So I'll recite the last verse, the same verse. Aparṇā, niścalā, lolā, sarvavidyā, tapasvinī, gaṁgā, kāśī, and then today, Śacī, Sita, Satī, Satya-parāyaṇā. Verse 28. Thank you for your patience and kind attention. So I don't know. I haven't looked forward what the next verse is, but we're just getting good. Actually, the verses the Kālī Sahasranāma gets pretty good. It's been pretty good, but it gets really good. So, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, and only 8 minutes late, which actually means an hour and 38 minutes late, but. Oh yeah, tonight's the clock's changed. That's right. That means.